Hey, Clemson family, we are coming to you after the Tigers 16-7 win over the Gamecocks. Every single play, every single yard, the numbers weren't bad. The defense was fantastic, but it just seemed like the entire game, beginning to end, was just such a chore.
I'm Daniel Shirley. It was hard, wasn't it? And Bill, it's been like that for a couple of years, where it feels like every single play, a chore is a great word. Hard to gain yards. You remember how easy it felt when Taj Boyd played quarterback and Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, even Kelly Bryant to some extent,
Yep.
except for the
Yep.
Alabama game in the playoff. I mean, it was easy to get yards. There were easy yards out there, and it feels like this offense for 3 straight years has had. There's no easy yards where they have to work so hard to get all this yardage. But I will say, Bill, people do no shave November, all that stuff. Clemson had no lose November.
Yeah.
And I mean, I am really impressed by how this team responded from 4-4. And I mean, we did the podcast that week after the game, and I'm sure it wasn't rosy and glowing and all that. But 4-4, when they played like they did at Miami and at NC State, this season could have really gone off the rails. And to see them respond and beat Notre Dame, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia Tech, probably three quarterbacks who are going to get drafted this year. I mean, I would think all three of those guys. I mean, I know Drake May is.
Yeah.
Sam Hartman will get drafted, even though the Notre Dame experiment didn't really work. Spencer Rattler will get drafted.
Right.
Haynes King, not so much, but I mean, he's not leaving either. He's got
Right.
more eligibility. But for them to beat those four teams, that's as good a month as you can ask for if you're a Clemson fan, I think. I mean, if he'd have told you 20 years ago, hey, Bill, they're going to beat Notre Dame, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia Tech in the same month, you would have taken that. Now,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have taken the Duke loss, and they've got one. I mean, think about it. Think about who they lost to. They lost to Florida State, who's in the playoff right now. We'll find out on Saturday and Sunday. NC State finished strong. They've won 9 games. Miami finished strongish. And Duke's pretty darn good. They don't have a bad loss other than how they played.
And losing their head coach at the end of the year, and my phone just blew up, and their quarterback, Riley Leonard, is in the portal. But those are postseason losses, aren't they?
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. And look, I won't be shocked if he follows him to A&M.
Right.
Right? I mean, A&M doesn't have a quarterback where you go, well, they got him. Riley Leonard's not coming here.
Yeah.
I would thought Riley Leonard was going to the NFL, but he didn't have a great year. He had a good
Injury
game. Yeah,
midway through. Yeah.
right. He had a good game against us.
Yeah. Did he?
Uh,
Absolutely.
but and boy, did that game not kind of set up the first half of the season for the defense and for the whole team. Turnovers and poor tackling.
Yep.
And it felt like the tackling, as those two things got better, the second half, the last month,
That's
the
right.
defense forced 11 turnovers in November and tackled mostly better, not all the way better.
Yeah, it's
It
an
was
inexact
better.
science.
It was better. It absolutely was better.
Yeah.
And the offense cleaned up some of the turnovers. Not all of them. I mean, I know the Notre Dame game was still a problem.
And
North
then
Carolina, there should have been one more pick that wasn't. We the roughing the passer call
right,
eliminated the one pick.
a very
So
good roughing the passer call. Very
yes,
accurate. It's enforced the same way
absolutely,
it was enforced against us.
absolutely. So the two huge issues for this team the first 8 games mostly got cleaned up, and you saw what they could be. Now, the offense still is, again, like you said, it's hard. Why is it so hard to complete a pass?
Yeah.
And when Cade did throw good passes Saturday, there were drops again that had stopped. The drops had stopped, and then all of a sudden they're back. Even Stellato, who I think's got the best hands on the team, dropped the ball right in his hands. So it was, it was a slog, but you won the game. And especially that game, Bill, look, I'll tell you, growing up in that state, I know you didn't, but you're a Clemson fan, obviously, or we wouldn't be doing this podcast. I grew up in that state, and when you lost to South Carolina and you had to get up Monday morning and go to school, that was no fun. And so you just wanted to win the game. And they did it. And the defense was outstanding. My goodness, Khalil Barnes, as my son Ben likes to say, legacy game. That was Khalil Barnes' legacy game, Jonathan White's legacy game, right?
White's, yeah.
So, look, you don't want the offense to be so inefficient throwing the ball. And that's 3 straight games where they haven't thrown the ball much at all against South Carolina. Right. 2 years ago, that didn't feel like they had to. This year didn't feel like it had to, and last year they couldn't. So, but we remember doing this podcast after the loss last year. And it's much better to do it today after that win, even though it wasn't pretty offensively. It was beautiful defensively, except for one drive.
Yes. Right.
I mean, did you feel at any time, and hats off again to Aiden Swanson, another huge game from him. What a star he's become, and he's going to be back next year. Did you ever feel, other than that one drive, that when they kept getting pinned back inside their 20, that they could drive the length of the field?
Oh, no.
I didn't. I felt like the offense was going to have to help them and turn the ball over, and they didn't, except for the one pick.
Right. No, a good enough game in all aspects and excellent on defense. I'm Bill Zimmerman. This is the Reign Supreme All Way podcast. We're a little ways in by now, but youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Catch all our episodes. Go back and find that episode from last year's South Carolina game and the difference in the tone in our voice this year, nitpicking versus last year with the calamity that took place there. This year, zero fumbles lost. And against the Gamecocks this year, that was critical because of the problems the offense was having. Imagine if they were turning the ball over before they got into the very edge of Jonathan White's suddenly longer range, right? A 50 and a 49, I believe he kicked, and we hadn't seen that effectiveness from long range from him this season. I wasn't a big fan of the SEC Network's production value. A lot of times they weren't showing on the screen how long the kick was, and I rewatched it Sunday night, and it's late. You got the sound down, and those announcers weren't terrific anyway. Not the worst I've ever heard, but it was a tough game to watch production wise, to get those lengths, to get those situational cues on the field, and I don't particularly care for whatever. I think it's Fox that turns the first down line red on 3rd or 4th down. And I'm like, what's going on? Well, I would have taken that over not having it at all, as many plays as it was missing in that game. It was a hard rewatch just because of all the inconsistency as well. And I won't completely exonerate the defense there, but certainly they did their job, for I believe it was 4 out of 19 on 3rd and 4th down combined. Held them under 200 yards, just a huge drive. In Clemson, 319 yards. Did it feel that way? No. 19 first downs. Did it feel that way? No, it did not. 38 minutes of possession for Clemson. Did that feel like that was the case? No, it absolutely did not. So, 169 total yards for South Carolina in that
this
game.
Era?
In this era. And with a drive, what was that? 70, 80 yard scoring drive?
77 yard drive.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's
against a pretty darn good quarterback. Look, I know that there's some South Carolina fans out there who bang on Spencer Rattler. I know for sure there's Oklahoma fans who bang on Spencer Rattler. He's tough as nails.
Yeah.
Because Clemson beat him up in the first half last year. and then he lit them up in the second half. Remember how bad Clemson's secondary was last year?
Right.
And
It was
there was
brutal.
and think about the improvement there with those guys. It's night and day. And then Clemson beat him up again this year. And Bill, he got up every time. He absolutely, I mean, how many times can TJ Parker drill you into the ground before you don't get up? Well, we don't know the answer with Spencer Rattler.
Yeah.
Because he kept getting up. He's tough. And he's a good player. I'm not saying he's an NFL starter or a star or any of that stuff, but he will get drafted and he'll stick with somebody's roster.
Well, and I didn't think Dak Prescott would be either. And I figured fourth round was about right for him. And, a very quality backup I thought that he would be, and maybe get a shot at, replacing Romo someday. And then suddenly Romo is hurt right away. And he's got, a long and storied career already and doesn't have a Super Bowl to his name. But, that to me is kind of where, coming out of college, what I thought of Prescott. I think Rattler maybe somewhere in that area. Someone who you hope you can sit for a year and really let him learn the speed of the game without being thrown to the wolves like some guys have. So, but look at Cade Klubnik and the story of his finish to the year last year, with the finish to this regular season, and the final two games of last year, the huge win over North Carolina where he seemingly could do no wrong. And, I get together with a cousin of mine down here from South Carolina, by the way, a lot of family up there, even though I didn't get to grow up there. He said, "What'd you think of Klubnik?" I said, where is that? If he's capable of doing that, where's that been all year? And then we start to see against Tennessee, well, maybe, teams can pick things up on tape. Maybe he's not going to always make decisions that are that great. Maybe the other players aren't going to be as effective. And I think, quite frankly, last year, the offensive line had an easier task against North Carolina than they did against Tennessee, than they did against this year's North Carolina team, or than they did against this year's South Carolina team. And look, the OL was banged up Saturday night. South Carolina does have a decent front seven, and, I would say, SEC quality front seven. They're not out of place in that conference, but at least on that defense, that's kind of where they can carry the load, and they certainly did. And this team has been missing Walker Parks. It's been missing other guys due to injury on that offensive line. It's been a challenge for Thomas Austin to resolve that, but it's also Thomas Austin's job, isn't it, to have quality depth who can get in there, play at least effectively, and then, maybe to have more than one commit to your name this close to signing day would be nice as well. But getting a little bit off track there, it just wasn't at all what we needed to see at any position, I don't think, on the field, running backs included. And they were clearly, Maffa and Shipley were the two best guys Saturday night out there on that field. Klubnik had some moments, but he also had some moments, right? I mean, what's the tone in which you're going to say that? And just
that
like
sentence is exactly the same and has two totally different meanings,
right? Like saying a word forward and back, taco cat, or something like that.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I mean, a win is a win is a win, right? Like, you take 9-8 or 3-2 or whatever you can. If you have to go in Iowa mode to win a rivalry game, that's what you do. Same thing when another team is on an equal talent level as you, like Notre Dame or Florida State or somebody. Imagine one less fumble against Florida State and we win that game, and, closely, and where this team is right now. But I don't know. I mean, you and I talked before this about, was this the worst form they had of the whole year? And we both decided, no, it's probably Wake Forest because of the quality of the opponent in
that
Wake.
Was hard to watch. Yeah,
I'll tell you what. Yeah, and I feel bad. A buddy of mine is a Wake Forest grad, and as disappointing as our season has been, that one's probably even more disappointing, right? I mean, it hadn't been good for either one of us. I'll tell you that. The football season texts for us have been very different on both ends of that conversation this year. But it was, like you said, a slog, or every play was a chore. I mean, it just, you talked about momentum too, and you talked about, you want to carry this into signing day. You want to carry this in. Well, Khalil Barnes sure brought momentum into the start of this game, didn't he? I mean, and then the last 57 minutes, like, where was that momentum? And I talked before this about, it kind of reminded me of last year's South Carolina game. They had the big pick. They had, other plays where just Rattler was rattled. South Carolina wasn't running the ball well either. And then all of a sudden it just kind of, oh, we got this. I forget how much they were ahead by. And then you just let them hang around. And Rattler's got no quit in him, just like you said. He engineered that comeback, pretty much single-handedly, along with, being given the opportunity by numerous sloppy turnovers that just didn't need to happen. I think a very good play call on that kick return and executed well right up until the end where the ball is coughed up and given away. Like that could have been a heck of a play that could have put a little spark in the team and created a little fire there to close things out and come out with the win that frankly, they should have been the better team and able to win that game. And that was one where I will absolutely say South Carolina was a better team on that day and in that game, without question, because Clemson was sloppy and South Carolina grabbed those opportunities and took full advantage. So you want to see a big bowl game, I think, for these guys, and we should find that out Sunday night, who the opponent will be, where it will be played. Obviously, I'm rooting for Florida so I can go make a short trip, but it kind of sounds from rumors and innuendo and message boards and reading between the lines with people, some of the writers that are close on the beat, that maybe it's going to be San Diego. We'll find out what that is, one way or another Sunday night after we find out what happens to Jordan Travis-less Florida State in the ACC championship game against Louisville. You want to see them take full advantage of that, whatever it is, and not have this game be, well, yeah, they went 4-0 in November, but boy, did they sputter against South Carolina. No, leave no doubt. What does Dabo Swinney like to say, right? Leave no doubt, have some really good form and find a way to really finish on a high note, and then take that into February signing day. December signing day will have already happened by that point. Take that into February signing day. Take that into the thick of transfer portal season, the guys who might still be out there, and really turn next year into a year where you make that playoff again, because it's going to be a 12-team playoff. There should be a path there for a team like Clemson. There should have been a path for this team with a 14 playoff, if you ask me, if they just secure the football. All the things that we talked about, the bad blocking, the bad tackling, all the faults for this team, there was a playoff bid up for grabs this year, and they just didn't even come close to getting what they could have, considering the talent level on this team. If they had just executed the fundamentals, they could have been there.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, they've played championship defense for most of the year. Again, I've banged on Wes Goodwin a little bit. I can admit when I'm seeing improvements. I'm not going to say I'm not going to say I'm wrong, because at that time, I think the things I said were true. But you see improvements, and I can change my opinion as the results on the field change, and
right.
the way they played Saturday. Clemson played to the defense. They played to the special teams. They were very conservative offensive game plan. I'm okay with that, as long as you win the game.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, Bill. Just think about this last 12 months, where we were 12 months ago. If they beat South Carolina, they're in the playoff. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep.
They're fourth. Now they might have gotten their doors blown off by Georgia. Whatever. If they win that South Carolina game and then beat North Carolina, which they did, they're in the playoff.
Yeah.
If they had not fumbled as many times as they did against Duke, they win that game.
Yeah.
If there's not the scoop and score against Florida State, they're at least going to be up by 10 going to the fourth quarter.
Right.
And Dabo's teams do not lose very often. I think it's 3 times when they have a lead going to the fourth quarter. And they controlled that entire game and never trailed, and lost to a Florida State team that looks like it is going to the playoff. The Miami game, we know what a disaster that was. No way they should have lost that game.
Right.
Again,
right.
You're up by 9 early in the fourth quarter. You should have won that game. That's one of those where they had to lead going into the fourth quarter and they lose. And then the NC State game, there's no way they should have lost that game. So that's where we are with this team in the last 12 months. Is They should have been in the playoff last year. They very well could have been in the playoff this year. And next year, I think they should be right back in the mix. And look, I'm okay. Look, if they're 10-2 next year, I don't want, you don't want there to be 2 losses, but they're 10-2 next year. Some fluky stuff happens and they're in the playoff. I see a path back.
Yeah.
Or path forward or path back to what they have been. And you mentioned the word there, and it's the golden goose word that everybody mentions about Clemson: portal. They've got to get some help in the portal because it doesn't look like they're getting any offensive line help in this class, this recruiting class. So they've got to go get some help from the transfer portal. In the offensive line, Hunter Helms is transferring out, so I think you need to add a transfer quarterback in, unless you sign another quarterback in this class, which they haven't got anybody in this class right now.
Right. No.
I think they need help. I think the wide receivers are going to help them in this class, but they could use some help on the defensive line. We know how many of the defensive linemen are going to the NFL. So, in the past, it felt like, the whole Dabo hates the portal stuff, right? We know the storyline that's out there. They didn't have roster spaces last year because Tyler Davis came back. Ruka Roro came back. These other guys came back. Would you rather have them or some rando transfer who you don't know? Rook was really darn good this year.
So
Tyler
good.
Davis was reliable.
Yeah.
Never out of position. Was he dominant? No, but he did his job. So I think they will actually go get some help in the portal this year because they have spots. B, they haven't answered those spots in the class, the signing class. So I think that you'll see them use the portal this year.
Yep. And there is an offer out, as reported by the player himself, to 300+ pound offensive lineman out of Shorter University in North Georgia. Hopefully that's only the start of things. We'll see who they can bring in from the portal. And maybe we'll get into this in more detail as things have more time to develop. A lot of guys are just now filing. We know Mitchell Mays, offensive lineman from Clemson, is going into the portal. You mentioned Hunter Helms. We've also already found out that Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is turning pro, going to the NFL, not the portal. We suspect we'll see the same from Nate Wiggins, maybe Barrett Carter. Who knows who else is going to decide to go ahead and forego their final year or years of eligibility and go to the pros. There's some other guys on the bubble. You could see those going either way. The class of high school commits right now for 2024, even the ones expected to sign early, maybe even enroll early in many cases, looks really good. Sammy Brown is a guy who can contend to replace Jeremiah Trotter. Ronan O'Connell, if he stays the only offensive line commit, certainly will have a chance to play early because we've seen that with Harris Sewell, with Colin Sadler, with Blake Miller, and a lot of the guys in those really good classes that Thomas Austin has had the last couple of years. This year's is very thin, still taking shape. Not impossible to find a guy in February, a quality guy in February. Isaiah Simmons, Kayvon Wallace, Travis Etienne, the list goes on. Guys who were very productive after not being an early signing day kind of guy, even not coming in right away. So there's time, there's no need to panic as far as that goes. And let's see if the portal can work out well this year. Another guy might go NFL, by the way. Will Shipley supposedly may be done playing at Clemson. I don't think that's anything new. So we'll have to watch all this roster turnover, and we'll have to see how the assistant coaches handle it in each room and see who's going to be here and who isn't next year among that group. So with about 9 minutes to go, though, I want to, and you as well, we want to get into a couple other sports. And I know you've been following men's basketball closely. What a start to the year for these guys. It's been 12 years of wandering in the desert, plus that, from Brad Brownell. Really seems to be coming together, though, and just success story after success story with the guys on the court.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about people I've been critical of. I think anybody who knows me has heard what I've said about this program. It hasn't been great. 3 NCAA berths in 14 years is not great. It's not good. And especially when you take over a program that went 3 straight years before you got there. But this year's team feels different. And
comeback win last night. Wow.
Right.
Over Alabama.
They're down 7 with 12 minutes left and you win at Alabama. Bill, this team this team has options. PJ Hall, Chase Hunter was bad in the first half and then played great in the second half. Joe Girard was great the whole game. The role players were really good. Shefflin had 14 rebounds. RJ Godfrey is becoming kind of growing into a star as a sophomore. There's talent on this team, and for them to go win the game like that on the road, I think says a lot, because it felt like last year they did not challenge themselves in the non-conference, and it cost them an NCAA tournament berth. This year they did challenge themselves. This game, Memphis, Boise State, those are good teams. And even if you lose 1 or 2 of those games, you will get credit for playing those games if you do what you're supposed to do in the conference. So, look, I think PJ Hall is I'm not saying he is in the same group with the big men greats that we grew up on, Larry Nance and Moose Campbell and Dale Davis and Larry oh my gosh, who am I forgetting?
Stay with us.
Dale Davis, Eldon Campbell. My brain froze for itself. Sharon Wright, our buddy Sharon Wright,
friend of the program, absolutely,
is right there as well. I mean, but he has so much talent offensively, and it means something to him. You can tell that I think this team has got something special this year, and we'll see how it plays out the rest of the year. But what a heck of a start for this group.
Yeah, and national analysts are taking note. Andy Katz, John Rothstein, a couple of the guys who have been on Twitter recently really singing the Tigers' praises. Field of 68, another good show to watch with another friend of the program, Terrence Oglesby, former Tigers guard, talked about the ACC possibly being the most improved conference in the country this year. Clemson would certainly be a part of that if that were to bear fruit. Yeah, we have to watch and see. I've always said, hey, wake me up midway through the ACC schedule. But it really does feel different this time around. It really does look like Brad Brownell has a nice rotation, starters and key bench guys who really understand how to feed off of one another. And I think you talked before we started this episode about how, hey, something's not working, someone else can step up.
Yeah, right. There's weapons, there's options, right? And you saw it last night. PJ got in foul trouble. Well, what happened? Chase Hunter and Joe Girard took over. Then PJ came back in, and then he took over. So they have options, and I think that's the biggest piece of this puzzle this year. I think Girard, look, he struggled the first couple of games shooting the ball, and he's probably not going to be the greatest defender in the world. He's played in his own defense his whole career at Syracuse, and now he's being asked to play man defense. That is an adjustment. But if he hits shots like he hit last night, he can play whatever kind of defense he wants to play.
Maybe not any kind.
Well, I think they've got guys who can help cover up for him on the defensive end of the court if he can hit shots like he hit last night.
Yep. Let's also get into soccer. I'm trying to check out a couple things, jog my memory real quick. And let's start with the women's team, which is in the College Cup, the soccer version of the Final Four for the first time.
Yeah.
Just amazing. That? I know they've got a tough draw, but wow, what a year it's been. You see highlight after highlight of amazing goals from this team just all across the pitch. And then Hallie Makowitz, absolutely what a terrific goaltender. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Apologies if I am not, but boy, just big save after big save. 13 shutouts on the season for her. Let's see what they can do against Florida State and maybe chase a title and get a star on that shield.
Yeah, she's been great all year. And that when you have that kind of, I mean, I'm not soccer aficionado, I'm not a soccer expert, but I do know that if you have a goalie like that, it breeds confidence into the rest of the team. And you can see that when they play. It's just been a remarkable year for for her and for them. It's great to see that program. Look, the men's program won 2 national titles in the 80s. They've added another one under Coach Noonan. It's great to see the women's program get the recognition it deserves. And they've got to beat Florida State. Florida State's had their number a little bit. Florida State's been the best team all year, supposedly. One of the best teams, if not the best team. So they've got a tough game coming up in the semifinals. But boy, if you win that one, what kind of confidence boost would that give you going into the championship game? So Friday night, they play Friday night. Can't wait to watch it. Hopefully they can pull it out, and we'll see if they can bring home a championship.
Absolutely. And the men also chasing a championship, trying to get back into the College Cup on that side of things as well. Usman Sila has just stepped up as a leader for this team. He's always been a key contributor, but, leading the team with 12 goals, 10 assists, and they are in the quarterfinals trying to get into that Final Four and put a 4th star on their shield, perhaps.
And they'll host. They'll be at home, with the win at UNH the other night. And I mean, he's so dynamic, with the ball, and he had the goal in the quarterfinal game, this round of 16 game. I'm sorry, the only goal in that game where they win 1-0. It took them a while this year. They had a lot of transfers, and it took them a while to kind of find out who they are. They've had some injuries, but I think you got to be really impressed with what you've seen from Coach Noonan's team and what they've been able to do. And look, I mean, they're still playing. And how many other teams have both of their soccer teams still playing? So I think you're seeing that these are 2 of the best programs in the country. They have been for a long time, and they're right back in the hunt this year.
Yep. A lot of fun. I always enjoy watching soccer. I need to carve some time out of my schedule now to really dial in and pay attention, not just catch those highlights scrolling on Instagram and Twitter. We will keep you posted on how that turns out. We'll keep up with the men's basketball team. And of course, we will find out where the bowl bid is going to be issued for Clemson. Again, that should be Sunday night. Find out who the opponent is, where they'll be playing, and also monitoring who else is going to turn pro off that football roster, who else might enter the transfer portal, any recruiting developments that might take place at this point. It may be more like the February signing date before we get more commits, or, guys maybe aren't going to be signing here in December beyond the class that is assembled right now. I think 14 or so commits. Does that sound right to you? So
yeah.
We'll get more in depth on all those things and maybe take a look not only at the roster, but at the assistant coaches and who might be on thin ice, who is really stable among that group of key contributors to the Clemson football program. Will Dabo Sweeney surprise us again? Will one of the really good assistants on that in that bunch get an offer to go somewhere as a result of the coaching carousel taking place throughout the country right now? So we'll see how that goes. We will be on top of it. YouTube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Subscribe, comment, tell us where you think we're idiots. Tell us just what we didn't get to, what we omitted and should have brought up. Tell us where you agree with us and build on those points as well. So we definitely want this to be a community of fans. And until our next episode, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.